I had a chance, Shabbos, to read, the introduction and different parts of the preface and the addendums. So I want to just have you read with me for clarity to help the flow of the mimer, because it is a long mimer. So it's easy to lose the train of thought. So it's important to know that. Okay, so it's on page 22 in the text that we're using. This is very good. It's called the treatise structure, and it's a very good one to keep in mind. It's brief, but it's helpful. So let's read. Kuntres Ummayan consists of 28 discourses, each comprised of between 1 and 5 chapters. What follows is the structure of the treatise. Discourse 1. The folly, the shtus, when one fails to fulfill the directive, quote, sanctify yourself even with the permissible. In Hebrew, that's kadesh atzmcha b'mutar lach. And when one's pleasures do not comply with one's mission as a human, that's the state of shtus that the Rebbe Rashab identifies. So if you want to know what is his view of shtus in this mimer in Kuntres Ummayan, I'm not talking about in other maimorim. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. I'm not talking about the way shtus is looked at from the halachic perspective and purely mystical perspective and Talmudic perspective, but we're talking about in this mimer, and you could say in Chassidus, it's this summary of discourse 1. So again, this is the Rashab's view of shtus as he talks about it. Now I go to discourse 2 to 4. So you see what he's doing here in this treatise structure. They're saying that the discourses 2 and 4 have a common theme. And what is that? Different types of Yetzer Hara follies. Okay, so number 1, Moshe was about the overall shtus. Chapters 2 to 4 is the various kinds of shtusim, shtuyot, in trying to cause man to transgress a Torah prohibition. Okay, that's 2 to 4. Now we're in the longest section of Maimorim of the entire treatise, 28 Maimorim. There's over here 5 through 11. That's 6 Maimorim, so it's quite long, and we're in the middle of it. So bear with us. And what is the theme of these 6 Maimorim, 5 through 11? The folly of one, quote, who goes by what his heart sees fit. That, Moshe, is the pasuk in Devarim that you asked about. Right? So, that pasuk is the verse of these 6 Maimorim in which the Rebbe spends time elaborating on. Man convinces himself that despite his conduct, quote, he shall have peace, which is part of that verse. So this is those 6 Maimorim. So I just wanted to point that out. We're not going to go any further now in the treatise because we'll do that when we get there later. Let's go back now to where we're at. We're on page 107. What he didn't say in the treatise and what we've been learning about as well is the hatzmeya. The Hebrew word in the pasuk is the joining of the thirsty to the satiated. Lemansfos harova es hatzmeya. Those are the last 5 words of that verse in Devarim. And the Rebbe is spending a lot of time on explaining this concept of hatzmeya. And he tells us that hatzmeya is hey tzmeya. It's comprised of 2. The hey, tzmeya. The hey is thirsty. So then he explained to us, what does it mean? What is the hey? So he told us hey is malchus, kingship, this 10th emanation of the 10 spheros. And he explained to us why is it tzmeya? Because it's the transitional sphera between the higher and the lower. So when it's in the higher state, it's not tzmeya. It has a lot of gifts from the 9 emanations above it. But when it transfers to give whatever it has over to a next generation, a next world called the world of Bria, Yitzira, and Asiya, it needs to give room and make room for those experiences, and those experiences are not as holy and not able to accept the hay the way the hay is in Atzilus. So therefore, when it does come into Bria, which is an advantage, it's now giving a new experience and opportunity, but it itself temporarily loses its high. You know, you could think of it as an example, a shliach who usually comes out of 770. He was a bacher in 770. He was a student, surrounded by the Lubavitch Chassidim and the Rebbe and everything else. That's a high. It's the abode of his life. Then he has to go to Timbuktu, here, there, and everywhere. He doesn't have that. So of course the purpose is greater, because to help a Yid who doesn't have it yet elsewhere, and to bring him back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu is greater than sitting in Crown Heights of Borough Park, Flatbush, Yerushalayim, Ramat Bet Shemesh. I mean, big deal. Okay, you have it all at your fingertips. But go out to Timbuktu and do it, that's an accomplishment. But nevertheless, so as far as purpose, as far as mission and purpose, the kavanah, where you really score points, is when the hay is not in its potency. But nevertheless, look at the hay itself. Forget about the intent of the hay, the intent of the mission. Good morning, Moshe Myers. But the hay, the shliach who's out there, gets dry, and he gets, he needs a battery recharge, because he's by himself. He has a few balabatim, and he has a kehila, and even if he has a big kehila, this is not his schmaltz. His schmaltz herring, or his chont, or whatever he likes, is in his hub, with his fellas, with his drinking partners, you know what I'm saying, with his chevra. This is not where his chevra is, okay? Understand that, okay? And every one of us has a chevra, okay? It reminds me, Adin Steinsaltz, Rabbi Steinsaltz, probably don't know this, but he had a group of chevra too, that was his little corner. And in the 70s and 80s, it was Tuesday and Thursday nights from 9 p.m. to 3 a.m. I know someone who went there who told me this, so I'm giving you a first-hand account. It was a group of 5-6 fellas who met on Jabotinsky Street in Yerushalayim, in the Van Leer building. Do you know the Van Leer? Have you ever heard about the Van Leer? The Van Leer building, Yerushalayim, in that section is a very fancy, for Yerushalayim standards, it's a very fancy building. Very royal. And somehow they met in one of those rooms. All they had was hot water, tea, maybe coffee and biscuits. 6 hours. 6 hours. What did they do for those 6 hours? They learned. They didn't schmooze. Maybe they, in between they schmoozed a little, but they learned Mishnah. So on Tuesday night, I think they learned Mishnah, Mishnayos, and Gemara. And Thursday nights, I think, I don't know if it was Chassidus, it was Medrash, and Tanakh. And who were the people there? Rabbi Moshe Shapiro, I think, was passed on. He was a leader in the Mizrahi movement later. These were childhood friends. Steinsaltz, these were all friends from the teenage years. So I thought about this a lot. It's like this was his, these are his buddies, you know what I'm saying? This is not his teaching and meeting people, and it's all great, but this is they talk a different language. So every one of us should have, hopefully. I have a friend that lives in Australia, but I'm with him on the WhatsApp, and every day, many times, either not speaking, but it's a different language. We grew up together, There's certain Yiddish expressions that I don't want to say online that we use to express that idea. So why am I saying this? Because, hey, Malchus, its natural habitat is not the way it becomes a source for creation. The natural habitat of Malchus is when it's in Atzilut, when it's in its original state of being in Atzilus. Oh, and there it's very warm and very pleasant and very nice. So when it does go to do its mission, it gets very hungry. And hence the Pasuk says, Hatzmeya. The hay is looking to fill its thirst through being satiated. And this is what he spoke about in this previous paragraph. Now let's read the Kitzur on page 107. One more point. He also said, what?
We're on 103.
Okay, thank you. 103. You're right. He said it, the last thing that Moshe asked me about, and I'm so happy you did. He said, Vayidei Zed, the top line, Vayidei Zed netoisav b'ribi oir. When the Nefesh Halikis descends to develop the Nefesh Abamis, it attains additional koach. That's an amazing thought. When you go out to put on tefillin with a yid, and when you go out and learn with a yid Gemara that doesn't know, or Mishnayos, when you help a yid, you benefit from it. And not only do you benefit from it a little, you benefit from it immensely, tremendously. And then he said, so Malchus, Shebchinas Malchus, becomes a mashpia. See, normally, Malchus is known, Avi, as the makabel, as the recipient. Right? The woman in the model, the male is the mashpia, the woman is the female, the woman is the makabel. What does it say? Mashiach comes, Eishes Chayil Ateres Baila, she will be the mashpia to the husband. What is the idea? The idea is that Malchus will be imbued with such koyach because of what it did, that it becomes a leader, the real leader. Which also, parenthetically, the Rebbe, many husbands ask the Rebbe about traveling and buying homes. And you know the Rebbe said, ask your wife and follow what she says. And that wasn't only a pragmatic answer, because it's also pragmatic. If your wife's not happy in a house, you can buy the nicest house. I met someone on Crown Heights. He built himself a beautiful, brand new house just now on the corner of, I don't want to say where, somewhere in Crown Heights. And I walked by the house. He's a friend of mine. It was great. I happened to speak to him, and he says, because he talks to me like, because we're old roommates, he says to me, and she's not happy. I'm going to have to probably sell the house or buy her another house. He built the house, custom made. This wasn't a bought house. The property was knocked down. I remember the old thing there. So pragmatically, if your wife's not happy with a house, if you want to keep your marriage not just surviving but thriving, you better move. So the Rebbe gave a practical, but also spiritually, the ruchnis. Why is it that you should consult your wife? Because Eishes Chayil Ateres Baila. Because when Mashiach will come, it will be revealed that she's the crown of the husband. Now it's in potential. So if you're smart, follow the potential. Okay? So this is all, you see, when you learn Chassidus, it gives you a perspective of practical things as well. This is what we learned till now. Now let's just read the Kitzur. Oh, and then he quoted the verse in Zechariah. Hold on. He quoted the verse in Zechariah. He says, Bayoimahu, on that day when Mashiach will come, Yetzu Mayim Chayim, Yetzu mayim chayim Yerushalayim. Living waters will go out from Jerusalem. And he says in parentheses, Pchinas Malchus, this level of Malchus that we're speaking about. Chetziyam el hayom, half to the eastern, hakadmoini, to the eastern sea, the sea of Chochmah. And he says in parentheses, sea of Chochmah. So Moshe asks, what's the connection? I explained to him of the idea of sea. Why is Chochmah sea? So in general, water is pure. Chochmah is pure because it's the first of the 10 spheros. So it's the most pure. It's an akud, it's an idea. Once you start, Moshe, developing the idea, your own stuff gets involved. I think this way, I think that way, I have this decision. But when it's an idea form, it's pure. Right? So the waters will go forth from Yerushalayim, and half will go to the eastern sea. So I said this, I didn't see, but I believe the east represents the eastern religions, Indian and Buddhism, and all those things, and it'll all be transformed to elikus, to godliness. And the Rebbe in the 1960s and 70s he alluded to this idea. At that time, everyone knows people were going to India to find themselves and find God and everything else. And the Rebbe understood that. And he, reflected back on the pasuk where Avram says, Avram sent presents. What does Rashi say? He gave the gift of a certain, mystical knowledge to the east. It's a Rashi. This is not Kabbalah, it's a Rashi. So is there some validity to that teaching, those teachings in the East? Yes, according to Rashi. But a Yid has the Torah. So because it says Avram gave it to Hagar, right? He gave it to her. It's for you, so it's not for us. But the Jew, the neshama is very thirsty. And when a Jew is bereft of that, of himself or herself, they're looking, we're searching, we're searchers. And it's good to search. And you look, you think, I'll get it here, I'll get it there. We all do this in different ways. States more maybe in business. Where can I make a few dollars to help the family, give tzedakah and all that. In the 60s and 70s, everyone knows it was very much, where's God? Who's God? Why God? Who am I? All those very important questions. So, the Yama Kadmoin is Yama Chochmah. The eastern river is the sea of Chochmah. Chochmah. God's wisdom is in the sea, in the eastern sea. So the waters will go forth, living waters from Yerushalayim, Yerushalayim being the holiness, and will inspire and transform the Eastern religions and the Eastern chokhmas to reveal its essence. Just like there are fish and many other things beneath the water. When you look at the water, you don't see them, right? So the Rambam says that when Mashiach will come, kamayim layom mechasim. He uses that language. It'll be like water that covered things in the sea will be revealed. All of a sudden, you'll see what's underneath the water, beneath the water. So that's the idea, that the chokhmah, that the wisdom that seems to be antithetical to Torah, etc., will be revealed that it is also Torah in a kosher way. And you could say that the Rebbe already in 1979, and Hillel and I have spoken about this, when he spoke one sikha in all of his years, where he elaborated on, what we could do and should do with transcendental meditation. And the Rebbe in that sikha, I remember I was in Kansas City, a counselor in Camp Gan Yisrael in 1979. I recall listening to the sikha on the hookup, and it was amazing, I never heard such language. I was rather young, at the time, and the Rebbe said that you should those that need it. He said those that need it. It's a very clear in that sikha. He didn't say it's for everyone. He says if you need this type of meditation, and he was talking about transcendental meditation, I believe TM, the Rebbe said we should create a kosher way of this type of meditation that will help people, help those that need it. That's a simplification of what he said, Yud Beis Tammuz, 1979. So at that time,
Aryeh Kaplan did that, didn't he? Sorry, Aryeh Kaplan came up with kosher information about meditation.
Yes and no. Aryeh Kaplan's is not. I'm not a bookie. He probably knows better. I'm not sure he was. I'm not sure he was looking to emulate a kosher TM, approach. I think he used a more of a meditation, a Breslov meditation. I don't believe it was what the Rebbe identified, and hence Dr. Twersky, Avram Twersky, told me, it's in my book Conversations with the Rebbe when I interviewed him. The Rebbe wrote him letters, and he told me he had it on his desk for many years, but then he put it, in a second shelf because he says, I'll get to it one day. And he wasn't he wasn't a chassid of the Rebbe's. He had great respect, so he didn't jump on it, and he didn't do anything about it. That's what he told me. And he wrote also to Dr. Judah Landis in Palo Alto, who I knew, and to a few other Orthodox scientists. And I brought Judah Landis to Marin County in the mid-'80s to lead a few meditation sessions using what he started to develop at the time, where he had the room darkened, he put on candles, and he had them meditate and say, on the candles while saying Shema, and trying to, I guess, emulate the TM approach, something like that. I'm not an expert in it, so that was my understanding of what was going on at the time. But it didn't really go anywhere. It did not take off. Maybe if Twersky would have invested himself into it, maybe it would have taken off. But at the time, it didn't take off. Today, there are several people that are trying again and doing things. One is a woman, an Orthodox Chabad person out of Buffalo, New York, and Hillel's been a little bit into also following and trying. So there's some interest today, but I can't say that from when the Rebbe spoke about it in '79 till today, anything concrete happened. Now maybe it's also because there, as we went into the '80s and '90s, the need for TM, and all that diminished. Okay, enough. Let's get to the Kitzer and then to learn some more insight. Through the descent of the soul into a body, into Nefesh Abamis, over there it knows it's going to get dirty and liable, even involving itself with prohibited matter. And yet, the neshama withstands the nisayon, the trial, the test. Where all matters of physical matter should be that the body needs for its existence should be for the sake of Hashem, l'shem shemayim. Nasa, when the neshama accomplishes this while it's in the body, there's an aliyah, an ascent, b'neshama v'ataynig l'mayla, to the soul, and the pleasure that it causes in heaven, to Hashem. Sfiras HaMalchus, as it invests itself, like I told you, here below in this world, but it's mevarer, it refines all matters that's here below. It gets a greater oil. What's the it? Who is referring to, Moshe? It's referring to the neshama. So the neshama gets more gas in its tank, okay, from being here. That's the word. Let's continue. Chapter 2. Hillel, are you there? Because I see a frozen. Are you there, or you froze yourself out? Hillel? Okay. Achshav in Isfilas HaMalchus Itzmeya. Moshe, the Rebbe says, this that we just said is when Mashiach will come. Avi, but right now, Malchus is Tzemeya. Mitzad Yiridoso, it's thirsty. Because it's lowered itself. It descended to the worlds of creation, formation, and action. And therefore it's thirsty. It desires ascending from its descent and incorporating itself in its source. So is also regarding souls. When souls invest themselves in a body and then an nefesh habamis in an animal drive, the soul descended from its level. As in comparison to the way the soul was pre-descent. It was the ultimate of spirituality. And it had no connection at all to Yeshus, to ego, and to material, gashmist, at all. Surely the soul, before its descent, it did not descend and get itself. It wasn't in a position of getting itself dirty, by becoming contrary to God, God forbid. It was in a place of holiness. But when it descends into a body, even when it's doing its job, like we discussed earlier, it's doing what it's supposed to, and it impacts the body by subjugating its gashmias. Nevertheless, next page, top of 105. In other words, yeah, it's doing its job, Moshe, but you know what? It's doing its job in an arena which has a lot of schmutz around it and problems and issues. This line, I want you to look, guys, 105, there's one line on top. Shahadehi, in English, it is related to existence and to the physical. After all, here, it starts from after all. After all, it is actually clothed in an animal soul. If, Yonason, if it's not hislapshus, if it's not mislabesh in an animal soul, it's no problem. You see, if you go to a situation and you're really not there, you're not there. If you're there as a spectator, you're not there. I always say when it comes to Fabrengen, don't sit at a Fabrengen as a spectator sport, because then you're wasting your time, my time, and you're not there. If you're going to a Fabrengen, if you want to be at the Fabrengen, not because someone told you to go or you feel you have to go, but you really want to be there, then you have to invest yourself. And to invest yourself, you need to say l'chaim, to sing a digin, you need to evoke, arouse your heart. Then you're there. If you're just sitting there, but you're there. Yeah, I'm there, but I'm not there. That's what he says here. When does the neshama have an issue?
Rabbi, one point of that.
Yes.
Sorry. Just one point. Yesterday at Shabbos at Adola, the Rabbi Parashul, it's very much what you said. Baruch, Baruch, he's sponsored.
Yeah.
Sponsor. He said the condition of people coming is they have to say l'chaim. They come to the Kiddush.
Very good. Very good.
Yeah.
But it's not just the physical l'chaim. It's the what the l'chaim represents. But so the neshama here, right? We're talking here about the neshama on high. It's in a great place. It comes into a guf nefesh habamis. He says it's liable to get dirty and problematic and all that. Says the Rebbe, that's only if the neshama invests itself. So the word in Hebrew, hislapshut, is the primary word to focus on in this sentence. an investment. If you do something you're not invested, you could stand there and be not touched. People say, oh, I went to the Rebbe, I went to here, I went to this tzaddik, I went to this gadol, and you didn't really go. You went as a spectator, so what do you expect? But if you really put yourself into it, there's no question you'll be moved on some level. So that's what he says over here. So I want to make sure that you understand that. You see that this is not just more verbiage, that the Rashab has nothing to do to fill his paper with ink, but rather he emphasizes and makes it clear to us that the only time that your nefesh will be impacted on some level, even if it's not in the shtus, but it's surrounded by shtus, it's when you're invested. Let me make this more clear, because I'm not sure. He's saying here, Moshe, a very important point. He's saying here like this. Yes, you realize you have a mission and a purpose. And therefore, you get yourself invested in the situation. The situation will have an impact on you. Even if you know better and you know why you're there, so you don't allow the situation to really, to bother you, you're still impacted. Why? Because you're invested. So we have three things. We have being invested and being impacted in a way that's negative, that's harmful, that's disturbing, that brings anxiety. Then we have a medium way, which is being invested, not being, touched to the point where you sink, but you realize that there is this issue. And then there's the highest way, well, not the highest. Then there's a way where you're not bichlal in a realm for itself, where you're not even invested. But that's not what we're talking about, because remember what we said, that the neshama, what does the neshama get its high from? From being invested. The fact that the neshama was with angels and souls and everything else, pre-descent, pre-coming into a goof, it's like I told you, it's like being in a kollel in Yerushalayim and just, not caring about what's going on. Are you really of course it feels very good, but you're not scoring, you're not doing something, you're not accomplishing. But when you're in the world and you have a family and you have to pay the bills and you have to go out and you have a Yetzer Hara and you have to and you go. So the Alter Rebbe says this already in chapter 23 in Tanya. There's one word over there, in that one line over there, it's very powerful. Everything's powerful, but he says, through Reiv HaIshtamshus, the more you use your Nefesh HaBamis, the more it impacts you. And that is the struggle of the Beinoni. The struggle of the Beinoni consists of that I'm in this world, so therefore the Gashmias touches me, and still to stand above the Gashmias. That's very hard. That's a great accomplishment. The other two extremes, either not having anything to do with Gashmias or being so immersed in Gashmias where you lost your head, that's comparatively simple, either this way or that way. But to be in the middle, to be here and not to be here, or to be here and not be impacted where you lose your head, that's a great accomplishment. That's a Beinoni. Let's continue next paragraph. And just as it's in physical activities, it's intellectual activity, one immerses their mind to understand something. You want to know how an engine operates, for example, or some other idea. Before your neshama was invested in its guf, you didn't know about engines. In heaven, there's no engines. What did your neshama think about and intellectualize pre-descent Hillel about spirituality and adakus and refinement? The angels, the spheres, the souls. How does this one look? How does this, right? All of those spiritual ideas, that's what Avi, your neshama, was thinking about before it came into a body. And Gashmis, I mean to say, the Rashab says, I mean to say, even intellectual ideas, but they are on the Gashmisdik chart, even that you didn't know of. The Rashab is adding here, guys, not only he didn't know the physical engine doesn't exist there, but the concept of Gashmias was also removed from the soul's perspective pre-descent. When the neshama descends into a body, its comprehension is behakshama. Behakshama with a gimel. Its comprehension is materialized, geshem. It's become materialized. The understanding. In other words, it understands, you can say, compare it to, advanced mathematics to practical mathematics. So they're both math, which is more on the spiritual scale. But nevertheless, there's a difference. This is applied mathematics, and this is theoretical mathematics. So the soul, the way it's in the body, comprehends Gashmias. It understands. It doesn't have the guy. And why is that? Because once it comes into the body, it's already invested in a natural animalistic soul. So it identifies with those conditions. So overall, it has biklalus. Generally speaking, it now has an association. Okay, very important words. Look at the bichlalusa nasala shayochis, shaychis, an association to yeshus and gashmias. Are we going to say that the soul, as it's in the beginning of its descent, all full of gashmias? No, but it has a shaychis. You're already in the ballpark. You moved into the neighborhood. You don't know the neighbors yet. You don't know the shuls. You don't know the community, but you're there. You're there. That's this idea is. The neshama, when it goes into the guf and Nefshabamis, it's already there. It's already there. It's left. It's ruchnius. Before the descent, the neshama had no association whatsoever with this type of gashmis. And to the point that from there it can actually become very dirty. So when the Shama feels that it's now in a realm that it's associated with Gashmis, it becomes very thirsty. To ascend from its descent and to be absorbed in heaven, in its source. This thirst, it didn't have it before. You see? My soul is thirsty for you. Did the neshama have Hillel this tzama l'cho nafshi when it was pre-descent? No way. How could it have it? The neshama was together with its buddies, angels, souls, celestial beings. It's happy-go-lucky. Comes into a goof. Oy, it's dry here. There's no water to drink. Give me some water. Please, give me some water. That's what he says. It didn't have it before. When specifically when it descends into a body in Nefesh then it attains the potency of thirst. So if someone asks Yonason, what's the advantage of the soul going into the body? What's the mila? One of the answers is the tzima'on, the thirst. My father told me how in the yeshiva in Lud in the 1950s, in the Lubavitch yeshiva, he says, you can't imagine our thirst to see the Rebbe. He says he remembers when they got the first time a tape sent to them of the Rebbe's Farbrengens of 55, 50, whenever it was, I forget. He says they were all hovered over, looking at, like what? You can hear, this is the Rebbe's voice. And then the Bochurim, being inspired by the Mashpiyim and the Farbrengens, Reb Shlomo Chaim, but they still didn't. And they fought to go to America. And Reb Shlomo Chaim didn't want to let them, the Mashpiyim didn't want to let them go so easily, because he said, you'll get ruined in America. Here, you're in the little shtetl. You're in the yeshiva. And slowly but surely, one left, and another left, and he came to New York. And the thirst, in a way where this COVID period is thirst. Right? I haven't been with you guys. You haven't been with me. There's a thirst. Yeah, it's every day we're on the screen, but there's a thirst somewhat. Simon. Let's continue. So too in Malchus. When Malchus descends into the lower worlds, that's where you have the thirst. Ha-tzemeya, hey-tzemeya. So now he's going to start talking about the satiation, the being satiated. We call that in Hebrew rava, from the pasuk, in the same pasuk in Devarim. Rava means that you satiate, just like you satiate your taiva. In Gashmi is ve'ein lo yirotzen v'tzimon l'likus. But Rav is a state where you don't have a desire for likus. In other words, what he's doing here, he's taking the words out of their literal context and he's broadening the understanding of two states of mind. You hear that? One state is called Hillel Simaon, and one state is called Rava. Simaon is the state where I'm hungry and thirsty. My soul needs food. It needs nourishment. That's great. That he sees as a virtue. Rava, he sees as a negative. It's like it's contrary to the pshat in the verse. Rava means it's satiated. So you think you're satiated? No, great, I'm not hungry anymore. He says, wrong. You're so satiated with your own wills, desires, and ego. So he sees satiated being a negative disposition. Let's continue inside. Rav is the position that he desires and he wants to have his physical pleasures. And with these physical pleasures, he quests his thirst. And you know why he could do it? They're right in front of his eyes. The godly souls thirsty and desires godliness. And you can and the nefesh elikis give it all the food and all the pleasures. It still remain hungry. You understand? This is what happened in the 60s and 70s and all the 80s. 90s. We have all the pleasures, money and taibas and everything, and the guy says, where is God? What do you mean? You have a nice house, and you have a nice wife, and you have a nice bank account. Wait, what do you need God for? I'm still empty. Because my neshama didn't get an iota. Gashmias doesn't talk to the neshama. Remember that rule, my friends. Gashmias does not make the neshama happy. And that's why as Yidden, why are we sometimes not happy? Because we didn't yet feed the neshama or feed it enough. So we remain unhappy. That's what he says here. I love the line. He says, it won't quench his thirst from Gashmis, because what it wants is godliness. So the soul, when it descends into this world, it's constantly thirsty. Next page, top of page 107. And and it can't satiate its thirst. Ki elikusei nemeru mizgala ata b'gila mamish. Oh, Mashiach is not here. Godliness is not apparent. So the nefesh elikis cannot quench its thirst completely. Ki yim b'derech yidis hametzias yonis. What does that mean? It knows there's such a thing about God. I know God exists. I know Yerushalayim exists. I know Mashiach exists. But I don't see it. I don't feel it. So I still remain hungry. Lo yasokas hamahus mamish. And even those that study and learn Kabbalah, Chassidus, and this and that, they don't have the essence. They don't know the essence. I told you the story of Tzemach Tzedek. Mashiach will come, will say, aha, aha, now I know. What do you know now? Oh, everything I was learning pre-Mashiach, it was up here in my head, but I had no idea. It wasn't like eating a sandwich or touching something. But when Mashiach will come, it'll be like eating a sandwich or touching. We'll say, aha, that's what you meant. Aha, now I got it. You know, what do they call that? The zenith, the pinnacle, right? What is the word in English they use for the aha moment? Okay? So he said, Ad lo said love v'yichsiv, because when Mashiach will come, it says in Yeshaya, v'yikonef oid meirecho. Your teacher will no longer be hidden. Then the essence will be revealed. But now, pre-Mashiach, the essence is not revealed. That's why the neshama is always hungry. Remember that rule. So in other words, Moshe, is the state of hunger good for the soul? The answer is yes. Yes. You know, there's a famous taich, the Frierdiker Rebbe says in the Haggadah, we say, Baruch HaMokim Shechishev Lasses Esakates. Thank Hashem that he thought of making the cakes. He's going to make one day the cakes, the end. So the Frierdiker Rebbe, I think, taich, he gave an explanation that what are we thanking Hashem? We're thanking Halavai, the famous word of Kem B'Kodesh Chazisicha. This is from the Baal Shem Tov on the pasuk Tzomaloch Nafshi, Tehillim 64. So it says, David HaMelech says, Kem B'Kodesh Chazisicha. So I should see your holiness when Mashiach comes. So the Rebbe, the Frierdiker Rebbe teaches, Kem B'Kodesh Chazisicha. And the Baal Shem Tov teaches, Kem B'Kodesh Chazisicha. Halavai. I only wish that when Mashiach will come, I should have the same thirst that I had for God and for Torah as I did during Golus. So there's a benefit in the Golus period while we're here that our thirst is greater. Okay, Chavre, we'll stop here and tomorrow we'll finish the chapter and we'll go on. Any questions?